February the 5th, 2026. Guys, you're looking at the dynamic duo here. They might want to change this hat to a turban wrap like Omar wears all the time. Give Chucky one too. And what I want to talk about in this video, guys, is we saw that last week they signed a 10-day extension on funding the government. And that included ICE. But if they did not meet if we did not, or our government did not meet a group of demands, from these two, then they would shut down the entire government. In other words, the entire government, including ICE, everybody is funded until next Friday the 13th. Okay, not tomorrow, but next Friday the 13th. And these way they goof off, that's probably going to give them about 2 days to work. They'll go home all weekend, fly in on Monday. You won't see them much Thursday or Friday, things like that. Now, this Thursday and Friday will be different, but that's the normal pattern for the week, their work week. Then they go home and try to figure out how to grift and steal and everything else they can do. Invest under the table, whatever it takes, take some money from certain individuals. They spend more time doing that than they do what they're supposed to be doing, and that's why they're so wealthy. But guys, you think about that, next Friday, and I'm going to read the list of demands that they have I guess they sent a letter to Trump, but I've got it. We're going to look at it. But what is the end game? The list of demands is so outrageous, you'll see when we read them. And a couple of things that are not directly in that list that have been brought up by Hakeem that they want done. It's so ridiculous that they know that the Trump administration will not do it. So what they're saying, then, if we do not defund ICE, you've seen the argument, and Border Patrol, then they would not fund any part of the government. We barely got it done this time. And I don't agree with all the funding and all, and I think we're spending too much money, but in the wrong places. But some of the money's got to be spent because of what happened for 4 years under Sleepy Joe. And so that's costing us a hell of a lot of money to back all of that out. You understand what I'm saying? So what is the end game? They know it will shut the government down. They know the Trump administration will not bend to all of those demands. So what are they looking to get as an end result? Just a continuation and complete chaos? So where, most of you did, Tom Homan went in, and I think he's still in Minnesota. He says he may have been called back to the White House. Anyway, he said that he was withdrawing 700 men. They had about 3,000 estimated, but he was going to withdraw 700 men to appease them. And his deal was the jails do not release the illegal immigrants that have been put in jail for various things, but to turn them over to Border Patrol. The police said they would do that, and I noticed a couple of things happening just watching some of the videos about the riots. Just after that happened, we saw local police start to move in, and Maple Grove was one of them, and there's a couple others that I saw protect the ICE agents in their hotels and to stop people from blocking the roads and actually arresting them. How long they stay in jail, I don't know. But that Maple, was it Maple Hill? The information I got from there was they had a pretty good judge and system. They weren't so lip-hearted that they're just going to let you go. But what will they accomplish? They know that if they don't create chaos, guys, and somehow try to stop the elections, they cannot win, especially if a lot of their voters are being sent back home. And the fact that all the money that we're seeing that was frauded, stolen from us in Minneapolis and California is probably 10 times worse. They're finding out now. They want to stop the election, and they want to stop couple of different bills. The SAVE bill, which they're fighting tooth and nail, and we got some rhinos, including Thune, or whatever his name is, that really are kind of backsliding on their promises to us. The SAVE Act would force everybody you couldn't vote unless you had ID and you were legal. And the Democrats freak out over that because, man, they wouldn't have any votes, would they? And then you've got a couple other acts in there that are along the same line that the Democrats do not want those passed either. All about election integrity and the fraud that's going on. They know all this money is going to lead back to these two and the rest of the demons that they hang with. They know that. But let's look at those demands and a couple other things, and I'd like to hear your comments in the below the video. And before we go right to the list, just remember that this is Gateway Pundit, but it says the House of Representatives, and a lot of you watched it with me, voted 2017 to 2014 on Tuesday to partially fund the government and end the partial shutdown. The legislation contains a 5-bill package which funds the following departments: Defense, Labor, Health and Human Services, Education and related agencies, Transportation, Housing, Urban Development, and a lot of that housing and urban development and transportation is grifted money, by the way, and related agencies, Financial Services, and the General Government and National Security, Department of State, and related programs. So all of that is funded till, as you see in the next sentence, February the 13th. The bill to end the shutdown also included, again, less than 2 weeks of DHS funding. And we'll get to that. We've talked about that too. And so they really can't stop ICE with their funding right now, and they know that. That's why they are trying to shut this government down, to stop the Trump administration and the conservative movement. And yesterday, Jeffries and Schumer released their so-called core demands for signing off on long-term DHS funding. Guys, you realize with the filibuster and rhinos, who really controls the votes? Think about it. It says, should these demands not be met, Democrats will go ahead and shut down the government. Complete chaos. A phoenix rising out of the ashes is what they hope. Anything to keep them from going to prison or not getting reelected. And I'm really getting, just like you guys, about where are the big arrests? You know, we're seeing low-hung fruit with some of the Somali fraud people and things like that. But it's all led by Tim Walz, Frey, and the Attorney General there. What's the deal? Guys, you and I would get away with that for about 5 minutes. Anyway, it says included in the demands, and we're going to read that list, but this is kind of a side note. It says they're requiring warrants for ICE and DHS officers to arrest any of the 20 million illegal aliens in America, including violent criminals, along with the unmasking of ICE agents. Now, how long would it take with the libtard judges to get 20 million warrants? Trump would be well out of office, wouldn't he? And they're hoping to keep this group here in order to secure their election, to get him out and continue their destruction. And some of you, not many, but I've heard a few comments say that I'm just not going to vote because it's so messed up. It's going to get more messed up if you don't vote. You know what I'm saying? The ship hadn't sank yet, so don't start playing fiddles. Get your butt to work and make sure people get out to vote. And one of the things I hope that is pushed before the midterms, and especially before the next presidential election, is that we have ICE agents and DHS at every voting poll in the nation. Every voting poll in the nation, and have the requirements of what the SAVE Act is trying to do. ID. It says Schumer and Jeffries also want to bar immigration enforcement from entering schools, churches, courts, and polling places. Now, they can run in the church, right? You saw Don Lemonhead run in the church, and that's just journalism. But it wasn't. It was a riot inside church services. Anyway, and what will happen, you'll have, if they can't enter schools, you'll have 40-year-old seniors filling the schools, and the churches will become full of highly devoted churchgoers. Most of them won't be Christian, but they'll be churches and courts. Can't go in there. You can't go into polling places. Why? Because we're going to cheat like hell, and we can't do it if you do that. So if this administration does not stop this stupidity before the midterms, we are in trouble. And I hope that's not the case. I hope that this is all going to work out, because is Trump letting them take the bait? Is he giving them more rope to hang themselves? And so they're trying to calm down the situation in Minnesota. Like I said, I saw where local police were aiding ICE, but the people on the streets are still going crazy. I saw 2 videos yesterday. Daytime, snow on the ground, not in the cities, out in the neighborhoods, and people were surrounding them in 2 different locations, attacking them. They were having to shoot the pepper balls. They were throwing those flashbangs, smoke grenades, some kind of chemical, and it was a massive attack in both places. So what we're kind of seeing is one side of it, but if you just look at some of the videos for the people that cover these live in Minnesota, and you'll see those too. And it's chaos. They're getting attacked worse than they were before this little negotiation went on. And check this out. And they know it's not going to work. So this is put together to stop the government, Trump's government, our government. Other demands allow states to sue DHS for any violations, requiring agents to give their full identity to agitators. Yeah, here I am, come and harass me and my family. Stopping so-called racial profiling, please, and permitting states to conduct witch hunts against immigration agents. And you see all these leaders of these riots and the governors and mayors saying, we're taking pictures of everything and we're logging it so that when we get back in office, we can prosecute these people like we did J6. That's how serious this is, guys. And you think that Hillary thought we were deplorables. What do you think about this bunch? Number 1 that the Democrats want is targeted enforcement. DHS officers cannot enter private property without a judicial warrant, indiscriminate arrest, and improve warrant procedures and standards. In other words, they'll tie it up in court until Democrats get back in the White House. And then we're going to let everybody go and go back to being crazy. Anyway, indiscriminate arrest and improved warrant procedures and standards require verification that a person is not a U.S. citizen before holding them in immigration detention. Prohibit ICE and immigration enforcement agents from wearing face coverings. Man, require ID, require DHS officers conducting immigration enforcement to display their agency, unique ID number and last name. Require them to verbalize their number and last name if asked. This is Antifa. And so they can dox them, make their life miserable, possibly murder them. Protect sensitive locations. Prohibit funds from being used to conduct enforcement near sensitive locations, again, medical facilities, so that they will be full. Somali doctors, schools will be full. Child care, I can't believe they added child care. They added that in here. Child care facilities, guys. My God, how much more ridiculous can you get after all the child care fraud that we've seen? Churches, polling places, and courts. You can't go into a court. You can't do anything. We want you locked in a corner somewhere till you die. Stop racial profiling. Again, prohibit DHS officers from conducting stops, questioning searches based on an individual's presence at certain locations. their job, their spoken language, and accent, or their race and ethnicity. If you know this group is crooked as hell, you can't mess with them anyway, because they may look different than you. When there's a tremendous amount of Hispanics working with both DHS and ICE, uphold use of force standards, place unto law a reasonable use of force policy. They can throw bricks at you and blocks and spit on you and beat you, but you can't touch them. See, that's how LA and New York, that's why the real law enforcement officers have left, is saying. And by the way, in New Orleans the other day during Mardi Gras, Homeland Security, I think it was, busted a police officer who was not here legally but had been drafted into the New Orleans police force, had a gun, badge, everything. They arrested him right there on the streets, hauled his butt off. That's how stupid the libtard cities are. That's how dangerous they are. And every big city, just like who built the cities in the Bible, in the Old Testament? It was the race of Satan, Cain, the Kenites. Just saying, that's why all the big cities are cesspools. And it goes deeper, guys. Tina and I were talking about this morning, and we haven't talked about it. I did videos years ago on the Fermi Lab up in Chicago. And it is a smaller collider than CERN, but it's a big one, and it can broadcast long distances. It can go through, there's rocks all through between there and up into South Dakota, North Dakota area, and there's another instrument up there. Can't think of the name of it, but they can broadcast that about 1,200 miles underground. Now, if you think about CERN, and there's dozens of them now, they have no practical use for the normal people, for us. They have really no practical use, especially considering the money they spend on most of what they say they're doing. You'll have billions of dollars in a project, and they're looking for a particle, they say. But Chicago is infested. Or have they created a portal? That's what Tina and I were talking about. And she was reading a couple of videos, or watching a couple of videos earlier today, where a lady said, let me try to remember, that she, at a meeting, Brandon Johnson, who we know is just look the people that he represents in the eye and lie to them, and with no remorse. But she said, one, that when she saw him at the meeting, there was an evil shadow with him. And I think it was in a church. And she quickly told the rest, and the grandmother of this group that was there shook Brandon's hand, and an evil feeling came through her, and she said, don't let the kids touch him that were there at this church meeting, and that she saw an evil shadow with him. And also that in downtown Chicago, she had seen black shadow figures flying overhead from building to building. Now, that's just her saying it, but when you look at the evil, and you look at, again, the FEMA lab there, you've got, what are they really doing? That was my point, saying they have no use other than absorbing a lot of money and probably opening portals. But right there underground in Chicago at the FEMA lab, you got probably a portal opening, something nefarious. The fallen angel technology never works out for good. But they, again, uphold use of force standards, place into law a reasonable use of force policy, expand training, and require certification of officers. In the case of an incident, the officer must be removed from the field until an investigation is conducted. Ensure state and local coordination and oversight. Preserve the ability of state and local jurisdictions to investigate and prosecute potential crimes and use of excessive force incidents. They want to come in and arrest the ICE officers, prosecute them, but they want to be able at the same time to let go the crooks, the people that are tearing up their city. and committing fraud. And they want to require that evidence is preserved and shared with jurisdictions, require consent of states and localities to conduct large-scale operations outside of targeted immigration enforcement. In other words, they don't want to have security. Number 8, they want to build safeguards into the system. Make clear that all buildings where people are detained must abide by the same basic detention standards that require immediate access to a person's attorney to prevent citizens' arrest or detention. Allow states to sue DHS for violations of all requirements. Prohibit limitations on member visits to ICE facilities, regardless of how those facilities are funded. In other words, you can't tell Mad Maxine, no, you can't come in here right now. Go fix your wig, or go buy a new one, or just go retire. Do something. They turned her away and many more, including Hakeem Jeffries and Schumer, Pelosi. They're incredible. Anyway, body cameras for accountability. I have no problem with that, and I think that's already been agreed to. But I did catch the way Holman said that in the Minnesota live stream the other day when he went down there. I think it was a couple of days ago. Anyway, he said, yeah, we're going to do it as soon as you give us the funding, in his tone. And so they got that much funding, but really we'll continue past this point. Let me finish this and we'll talk about something that directly relates to it and why I know they're not trying to stop just ICE and Border Patrol. They're aiming at the entire government. Let me finish this out. It says these reforms should apply to all federal activity, whether funded by fiscal year 26 appropriations, the OBB Act, or the Big Beautiful Bill, or any other act. Furthermore, they are steps that the Trump administration has the power to take right now to show good faith with the devils, including fully ramping down the surge in Minnesota and removing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem from her position. These are common sense solutions that protect constitutional rights and ensure responsible law enforcement. Sincerely, the liars in chief, the demons. Over here is Wahhabi Jeffries, and over here is Chucky Schumer. And that was Wednesday, and we'll credit it. Nick Sorter put this over to GP. It came from Chucky and Mr. Jeffries. But again, there are demons. That's why I mentioned the FEMA lab up there in Chicago. And people know it. We know it. Nobody can lie, steal, and cheat this hard. And do they actually believe themselves? Have they been so dumbed down and burnt down to where they just have a couple of brain cells left that someone has fried them and made them believe their own lies? Dang. And we've talked about this in one of the live streams, I think, but this is the big, beautiful bill and what border security and ICE and everybody else got of it. But we're focusing on border security and ICE. The bill provides more than $70 billion in supplemental funding over 4 years for the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol to increase border security operations. The funds are available until September 30th, 2029. So they have $70 billion now. And the money is set up for walls, physical barriers, facilities, $5 billion, 46 for walls and that type stuff. Let me pull this down. $4 billion to hire and train new Border Patrol agents, including $2 billion in retention and hiring bonuses. CPB Technology Fund, $6.2 billion in border security technology and for screening processes along the northern and southern borders, including the procurement and integration of non-intrusive inspection equipment and associated civil work such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of their tech, right? And the border support for state and localities, like $12 billion of that goes to the local guys. Now, the big bill funds additional CPB and border-related measures, including funding the CPB vehicles, $855 million for that, CPB's full agency budget for fiscal year 2024 was 17.1 billion, and they've, like I said, now they've got about 70 billion to tie all this in together, and they're trying, from my understanding, is to divide it into 4 segments to cover the 4 years. Now, ICE, this bill provides 75 billion for them, so 70 billion for Border Patrol, 75 billion here. We got 145 billion dollars to go to 2029, and there's other monies available. The bills provide more than 75 billion in supplemental funding over 4 years for immigration and customs enforcement. If this is to expand interior enforcement operations, allowing for unprecedented expansion of immigration detention and deportations operations within the U.S. The funds are available again until September 30th, 2029. So they're not defunding ICE. They may be thinking that there would stop some additional funding that would be needed, but they're not until 2029. So their real goal is against everything they say. The real goal is to take down the nation. This government, they want to go back to the demonic system they had with Obama and Sleepy Joe. And they're so stupid that they can't understand. They couldn't play a whole chess game. They don't understand. Remember, I think I mentioned yesterday, you get foreign mayors that do not have the best interests of this nation into Chicago, into New York, into Maine, in Minneapolis, people that are in power. They don't jump right. They have the long game. The people that are fooling our Dems, okay? They know it's a long game. And so they just creep up through the political stairway until they are the governor or mayor. And then the Democrats are going to say, what? And they're going to come for them. The people that the Democrats are putting into power will eventually come to them, take them out, because they know they're lying, cheating demons. Our politicians that are U.S. citizens are worse than the immigrants because they allow it. But the immigrants, it's just like a traitor in the army. The other army is not going to trust him even if he runs over there. And so they are committing suicide. I guess they think they'll die rich. They don't care, maybe. They don't care about the future of their kids and grandkids. It's happening on such a fast scale that they need to pay attention. But again, I don't know if they have a human brain cell. And I'm serious about that. Are they demonically possessed? And because the devil always wanted to destroy God's creation. But guys, you can read this. I'll put a link to it. And what it's doing is just like in the above paragraph about Border Patrol, it breaks down how they're spending. Immigration detention, 45 billion, things like that. Enforcement and deportation operations, 29 billion. And guys, I think that's enough. I'm sure it's very expensive. Just think of the cities they're in, the hotels, the training, the weapons, the cars. It's got to be expensive. And it's a mental problem. It's a mental fatigue problem if they cannot rotate on a normal basis. Anyway, we're watching this, guys. I think it's very important. Remember, Friday the 13th is going to be a big day, and I don't think they're going to take off that Thursday and Friday more like they're doing today and tomorrow. I haven't seen a lot scheduled. But everybody wants to drag their feet, and we've got to get the SAVE Act through. And if any of you guys are in the state where John Thune is in, y'all need to call his office, guys, because he's waffling back and forth on the SAVE Act. And that's the only thing that's going to save the nation. We've got to have voter ID. We've got to have people at polls watching it and all of that, all of the above. Anyway, you guys keep an eye on it. We're watching it. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.